the railroad track, the rails themselves, it's the same way. But it's an optical illusion. You look down and it sort of looks like it's come into one straight line. This is not an old argument. This was postulated and proven to be a bogus argument clear back in 1895. Okay, with Gleason's book. I mean, it goes on and on. So, yeah, the consensus is, this philosophy professor is saying, well, how about this? How about this? How about that? And every time you give them, I mean, the answers are there. I mean, it's just like I wrote to him and said, listen, I know where you're coming from, but listen, you're not really reading the information. Because if you really dissected it honestly, you'd have to come to the same conclusion I did. I think I'm a reasonable, objective individual. I want to, again, this is one thing about Alex. I mean, God rest his soul, when he would call me and say, True, let's talk about this on the show. Let's talk about this flat earth. I says, no, it ain't happening, Alex. Well, Dominique, believes there's something to it. And I said, well, I respect Dominique, and I respect, Dominique's a very smart man. I've met him and I've known him for so many years. I mean, if Dominique thinks there's something to it, but it's not important to me, And I said, Alex, it ain't happening on this radio show. Oh, well, okay, it's your show, but I think we're missing something here. And Dominic, basically said, here's what I've observed, here's what I see. What do you have to make about this? Well, I don't. It's interesting, but it doesn't matter. Not when the world is going to hell in a handbasket. Why do we have to be, looking at that? And I kind of thought, this is some kind of a crazy CIA psyops thing that people start thinking about this gobbledygook. Because I mean, I thought I was the biggest mocker of it of all time. That's what I wrote to this professor at Harvard. I says, I get it, but and I gotta say honestly, if I wasn't laid up going stir crazy on my bed, doing some rehab on my total knee replacement and just searching for anything, even reading the back of toilet papers, I said I fished out Hendry's book from the garbage can. I says, I'm desperate. I'm going to get a laugh out of this one. I thought, I'll just see what in the world would possess a crazy guy to write such a crazy thing and get some comedic relief. But I started to read it, and I started to digest it. I mean, dissect it. And I'm just like, oh, my stars. No wonder Alex wanted to discuss it. No wonder Dominique wanted to discuss it. Because the big picture is, again, what your brain is being programmed to believe or disbelieve. Whether it's vaccines are good, whether, it's the whole mass shooting, whether Sandy Hook really happened or not, you got to go back to the understanding it's all psychological operations, really. And they want you, the powers that be want to have you believing something that's just a big lie because, you see, there's an alternate agenda. And Henry does masterfully put this together, pieces together. Because he says, listen, basically what I got out of the book is if you get a handle on the truth of the world we live in, I mean, the absolute truth, so many other things start to fall in place, and suddenly there is no power to the controllers. Because you see, you realize that, this earth is the way the Bible says it is. And if the Bible is right in this thing, then everything else in the Bible is even more right. But on the other side of the coin, if what the Bible says is old, mythologically tribal superstition, then who knows what else is wrong. And so you might give it a little bit of respect, because it's always good to be honest and deal good with your fellow man. But ultimately, there's no relationship with God if you distrust this basic lie. You know, if you got to get through it and find the truth. And I'll honor Alex. He was so vociferous in support of the so-called flat Earth, and to the point of being almost obnoxious about it. And he hurt people's feelings a lot. But he was very. He says it is what it is, people. If you can't see it, you're stupid. You know, you're an ignoramus or you're dishonest. And I got to tell you, Major, he got in Jim Fetzer's face like you won't believe on this stuff. Hey, Fetzer, how in the world can you say the moon landings were hoax and have a whole book? In fact, your whole publishing company's Moon Rocks Books, right? Moon Rock Publications. You have all this in NASA. You're exposing NASA. Well, what's their biggest lie? What's NASA's bigger lie than the moon hoax? And Mr. Fetzer, here's the evidence. What frustrated Alex and what frustrated me to this point still frustrates me is people just sit back and say, you're crazy. The Earth is not flat. It's a spinning oblate spheroid. End of story, end of discussion. Let's not talk about it anymore. If you continue to persist in doing so, you absolutely should be cut off to the nut bin. There's no logic there. There's no debate. And that is problematic. You know what I'm talking about, Major.
Oh yeah, you have to run it through on every angle, every side. And what's interesting is meeting people that were that just are starting to hear about the 8chan and how that's an area where everybody can go to talk about this. All of these things that might we're not able to, and of course on the internet. And of course you're doing it here, but yeah, I've got some great stories. Maybe for the second hour. I'm a little distracted right now. I'm trying to pack my stuff up and then get a hold of the front desk, make for a late checkout. So
okay, Dick, go ahead and do what you need to do. But
I'm online. I'm right here. But I'll be right here. Just I'll hop back in when I'm ready.
Okay, let's get you a good big cold glass of water to sip while you do that. Okay, so yeah, folks. I mean, it's not again the issue of really what shape the Earth is. It's the issue is how are you able to think? Where are you being told what to think and programmed how to believe, or are you willing to look objectively at the evidence? This Professor Harwood said, well, okay, so you put a Nikon telephoto lens on a sailing ship that looks like it's disappeared over the horizon and it comes completely back into view. Well, that's interesting. Well, there's got to be some anomaly to that. Maybe some miraculous situations. I mean, but that's one point. Then he brings up, he says, well, here's what my other philosophy professors all say to counteract any of this flat Earth gobbledygook. Look, all you had to do was look at a lunar eclipse and see the shadow of the circular Earth passing over and blotting out the sun's causing the moon to radiate, and so the shadow of the Earth clearly is round. It's a globe. You can see it in the lunar eclipse, and you've seen it for thousands and thousands of years. That's why the Earth is a sphere, is round. Okay. So the challenge was made by the philosophy professors. You guys have lost this one. You're not going to be able to counteract that. I want to see what kind of crazy response you come up with that about the eclipse. Okay. Henry has a section in the book about that, by the way, but there's even more new conclusive proof that he sent to this Professor Harwood and said, please comment on this. Because there's pictures of a full lunar eclipse happening. Hold the phone, folks. A lunar eclipse is happening when the sun is still above the horizon of the Earth. And so Henry showed document video and eyewitness testimony of many people asking the question, how is this possible? You see, the sun is still up. It hasn't sunk below the horizon, so there can't be any shadow upon the Earth from the Earth's shadow cast upon the moon. The angles and the positioning of the sun with the moon is impossible. Not only that, but the shadow, whatever it is, comes from the top of the moon down to the bottom. The angles are just flat out not possible. So you point this out to this professor, and it's been amazing. He always wants to change the subject. He always wants to go someplace else. There's another rabbit hole to dig down into. No. Focus on this. We need to come to some agreement. Why do you suppose there is this eclipse when the sun is still up? So I shot him this is what I think. Here is a little known factoid. This was actually no less than the National Geographic magazine. And they had a debate on this online with science. This is physicists now. Science. There's actually the headlines of the National Geographic story read there are as many as 4 moons that astrophysicists have identified. 4 moons, all identical in size. It's just that 3 of the moons have no illumination. 4 moons, but you can't see them because they have no illumination. But they are objects. I said, there you go, folks. This is from astrophysicists, and they've identified them. Here's the article. Here is the actual pictures that they've made of them by telescope. Could it be that one of these 4 moons is what's going in front of the illuminated moon so you can't see it? Because the debate is, like Henry's always said, the moon has different light. It's not just reflected light from the sun. The moon has illumination that has a specifically blue wavelength. And when I read that in Henry's book, I said, now I got to check this one out. Really? And so when I got fairly mobile, that's the first thing I did in the night of a full moon in the summertime. I have an infrared thermometer that's very, very accurate because I have it in my lab. I have to measure things in my laboratory work. And sure enough, the side of my house that had a shadow, the moon shadow, guess what? It was warmer in the shadow by about 4 degrees. And then I bring out to the moonlight that's illuminating out where the shadow is, and it is colder. It is. Moonlight is cooler than moon shade. Just the opposite of sunlight. You go out in my driveway pavement on a hot day, the difference is about 8 degrees in the shade versus on my driveway, but 4 degrees colder in the where the moonlight is beaming down, and actually warmer in the shadow. Yeah, folks, I verified that. You see, that right there shows one thing, that the moon is not reflecting sunlight. Because you see, anytime you reflect sunlight, you can show this. It actually makes it hotter. You put a sun reflector around your neck to gather the rays of the sun, it's going to concentrate and make it hotter for you. That's what beatniks used to do in the 70s on the beach. Put a little foil strip around themselves to concentrate the rays of the sun into their face. It concentrates it, folks. Reflections concentrate. It makes the light brighter. It makes it hotter too. So no, and if you shine light off a reflecting surface, the light does not change properties. See, here's the other point. Sunlight reflected on from a piece of tin foil or aluminum foil, you can actually measure the red properties of that sunlight, and it never changes. So if in fact the moon is just reflecting light, and what we're seeing in the night sky and a full moon is reflected light from the sun, they would have the same properties as the sun has during the day. It's just been reflected. The sun is down, it's no shining, but it's still reflecting off the moon. Still going to have the same properties. But folks, it isn't. There is absolutely, you can measure, it's a blue wave of light. We hear once in a blue moon. A blue moon is what's, you have 2 full moons in a month's period. That's a blue moon. Well, no, folks, the reality is the light of the moon is a blue wavelength, not a red and / yellow wavelength that the sunlight is. I mean, that's documented. There are even a whole genus of plants called moonshades, nightshades, also called moonshades. Nightshades produce through moon rays their energy field through the moon synthesis, not photosynthesis. They process the blue light differently, and that's how they produce their energy from. I believe tomatoes and eggplants are 2 good examples of nightshades. Check it out, folks. Don't believe me? Look at it. If there was no moonlight on these plants, they just wouldn't hardly survive. They can't produce their glucose, their synthesis in sunlight. They primarily do it at night. And it makes sense because I think tomatoes ripen a lot more and grow faster during phases of the full moon. I've noticed that in my little garden. So anyway, I'm just putting that out there. So here we have Henry showing all these things that the eclipse cannot possibly be from the sun and the shadow of the earth. It's a fiction, pure fiction. And these professors just flat out ignore it. Nothing. We don't want to talk about it anymore. Let's go on to the next one. No, but they won't give an answer. They act like they don't even hear you. It's quite amazing. So, well, if Major is with us.
Yes, I'm still here. I'm just rushing around. I'm going to put a call in here to get a late checkout, and that way I'll be 100% yours during the second hour. Just caught me with my pants down and no water.
Oh, I won't ask what kind of underwear you're wearing. We'll let that one go.
So, no, we're all good here. Yeah, one thing true I noticed about this is that, and I saw something, and I think it was like I've been able to watch hotel TV, which is CNN, by the way, has taken over all of this stuff, which is really crazy. But I think it was on CNN or CNN Philippines or CNN International or one of these, and there was a woman that did a documentary about flat earthers, or it was a segment about it. And this was just crazy because it was set up it was almost like, why are these people insane? And that was the angle of it.
the whole premise as, what happened to these people? How can they possibly, and they're not even taking a look at, well, why don't we start with a couple of premises like the measurements at Lake Tahoe, and you as a person who's a baller, explain that to me. And that's the one thing that got me just totally fascinated by it is, wow, you got a point here. Okay, let's start with that. But they're taking the whole thing and reversing it around, saying, well, how can these people believe that? And it's, well, how can you not, if you have any sort of curiosity in the world that you live in, round or flat, try to explain that. Try to explain that. And I can't do it. But what's happening in the media on this topic is they're just making you guys out to be a group of crazies. It's like, what, and you're lumped into this category. And I don't know. I get offended. I get offended when I see this stuff. I'll try to look it up for you. Because this stuff repeats over and over, and I saw snippets of it, and so they've got bad programming and they run it over and over and over. It's some sort of psychological warfare.
Yeah, but, and that's a classic example here. It's called straw man. They're attacking straw man and ad hominem side swipes. Okay, they don't, and this is what's happening with these professors. They flat out get so angry that they start. One guy starts say Mr. False and Mr. Ed, the horses, but talking horse. These guys are so crazy. I says, why you start attacking? Why calling me false instead of true? Because you can't answer the questions, and when we do answer the questions and demand a response from you, then you attack us. I said, listen to me. I have no axe to grind. I have nothing to profit by it. All I can tell you is what I've read and studied. I've demanded answers. Hendry's the same way. Look, these are things that demand a verdict and not just to be written off. Because everybody will come back and say, well, look at the eclipse. Well, here's the proof of it. And this is one thing that I got to tell you, Major. When I was reading Hendry's book and talking to Alex more intelligently about it, I think I even had a few conversations with Dominic about it, because I'm still saying, whoa, this is really like my brain is going down the freeway at one speed and I'm hitting reverse in my Ferrari and grinding the gears. The gears of my brain are screeching here, because what I uncovered, I did this to check Hendry's footnotes and to prove him that he's kind of misread it or whatnot, of the documentation he puts out. But I did in fact pull up the software of the FAA flight traffic controllers. There's software logarithms that drive the computers that map the flights based on their ETAs and the elevations and all of that. And I was shocked. It's right there in the literature. We have to do these logarithms based on a flat, non-rotating Earth. Oh, really? Why is this not commonly taught? And then you follow it through to other government publications, even the United States Geological Survey, the USGS. This was started in the late 1800s, right about the same time as Alex Gleason's book came out. And he was debating on this subject. There were professional old school surveyors who were really upset at the new wave of surveying tools called theodolites. It's what the surveyor uses to measure and equate distances of acreage, right? There were a lot of them progressive new surveyors who were pressing the United States government to do a geodesic survey based on the premise of a spherical Earth. Well, I got the book. I got the 1896 final book put out by the U.S. government. They're saying, Well, we don't want to be in a debate of the shape of the earth. We must be accurate. And it was the book was 60-something pages in just showing the scientific mathematics of on a slide scale, right? Side ruler. How a geodesic curved theodolite is fine for short distances of under a mile. But when you start doing large surveys of hundreds of miles, the accuracy is very, very, very much off with a geodesic curved assumption theodolite. And so we have to be accurate. We have to do this for posterity. We have to be accurate. This is just as a flight simulator, an FAA traffic controller, better damn well be accurate, or there's going to be planes colliding in the midair, you see. Same concept, same precept. So the progressive surveyors that were, again, the surveyors listed, they were petitioning to go with the geodesic theodolites. Guess what? They're representing Jesuit universities. Surprise, surprise on that one. And this is a Jesuit / Roman Catholic agenda. Copernicus was Roman Catholic priest. That becomes pretty darn clear as you dig into this, and Henry showed it too. There is an absolute anti-God conspiracy. They want you to believe what ancient Babylon believed, ancient Baal worship believed, that the sun is the center of the universe. Thus, we're sun worshipers. Baal is the sun god. And it's directly, diametrically opposed to the Hebrew God of creation. Folks, that's just it. That's the summation to me. That's the clincher for me. Oh, I see this. How is this any different than conspiracy to take away your guns, to take away, to have guns taken away, Second Amendment rights based on lies of the media of these shooters like Adam Lanza and Sandy Hook, which the evidence is pretty doggone amazing that it didn't happen. It's all a hoax. See, this is the battle we're fighting here. You can't, and I can't, get on as a talk show host, and I've been doing this for 20 plus years. You can't get up and expose government corruption without taking it all the way down the rabbit hole. All right? And see, and I get the argument. What the heck does it matter? So, Major, when you come and you say this about the news media making it a story and painting with broad strokes the flat earth nutcases being mentally unstable and maybe need to go in for a chemical lobotomy, this is why I'm telling you. Okay, it's like, don't bother me with the facts. You either believe what we programmed you to believe, or we're going to have to re-educate you and put you away. This is sadly one of the issues that I'm pretty convinced that Alex was facing.
I mean, go ahead. I'm sorry to jump in here, True, but that's a difficult thing, and I've looked at this from so many different angles, and the thing is I think that the only way to address this is simply one topic at a time, because you can't, I mean, if you can't, people aren't ready to hear what your conclusion is. They're just not ready. So just one topic at a time. And I think that, what was it? Your offer is still out there. It was something like $10,000 for anyone that can scientifically explain why water, how to simulate water the way that it should be on a round earth, right? That's one way. Or for me, the one that got me is why is Lake Tahoe flat over that distance? Any lake.
I mean, Lake Ponderay.
But that's the one they have measurements on. They did a measurement on Mead, and I mean, anyone can say that, and you can dispute it, but then go out and measure it again. or refute the two people that went out who they didn't have a goal in mind when they were doing this. The people that actually did the measuring, of course, the people that were contractors to do it, they did. But the guys, from what I understand, that were doing the actual laser levels, they're surveyors. So I think there's such an important message in all of this, and I mean, I was talking about the environment earlier, about these environmentalists, and what they've done is they put like a religion into, and then now all of a sudden they're scientists, but their end goal is to prove that the earth is going to be burned up in 12 years because of what we're doing, or that plastic straws have anything to do with pollution or whatever it might be. But they're not scientists. They're simply there to prove what needs to be funded, and there's something wrong with that. So there's an end conclusion. The science gets warped, and they flat out lie. Like, of course, you saw what happened 2 weeks ago with all the NOAA data. They'll I'm with you on this, True. I don't trust the government for data now. Don't. So everyone should find their own conclusions, but take a look at Hendry's book. I mean, there's so many different places you could just flip through it and point to one, and something will speak to you. And you start there without the end conclusion. And I mean, to me, that's the only way about it.
Here's the other thing. I know we're going to break here in a few minutes, but I want to throw this out there because there's the Christian body that I'm associating with. There's a men's group. I took one fellow aside and just basically showed him what I call biblical cosmology. The scriptures in the King James Version are, for instance, 2 Peter chapter 3, I think it's verse 5, where Peter is saying that in the last days there will be these scoffers, these people that mock believers and what they say. And he says the reason is this one thing they are willfully ignorant of. The King James Bible is very clear that it references Genesis chapter 1, that the land, the earth, is placed in the water and on the water. This is such a key point in this whole cosmology debate. Well, this friend, he says, well, let me go home and look it up, and I gave him the references. Well, he goes home and reads in his new international version, the NIV, and it says something completely different. 2 Peter 3:5 says that this is what they are ignorant of, that the earth is made of water and made from the water. That's totally different. Of course, hydrogen bonds make up the earth. And of course, that's part of the Genesis account, that first there was water and then land appeared from the water. It's made in the water, but see, it's completely, and that's one example. Every other argument for stationary, unmoving, solid, terra firma in the Bible, the New Inspired Version, the New International Version, I should say, refutes that by changing it. Now, do you realize that, and Hendry has a whole section of this in the book, why it is that these charlatans are changing the King James Version, the authorized version of the Bible. And do you realize that the New International Version has flat out omitted a full 10% of the Bible text? That's just flat out omitted it. In other words, if you have a 1,700-page King James Bible, you'll have 170 less pages in the New International Version. They've taken it out, and some key things are just omitted. And that's not counting the thousands of very, very important changes in meaning. We're going to take a break, ladies and gentlemen. We'll be back after these messages. Don't go away. Saturday morning, actually. We're broadcasting live here in Utah at, it's 9 o'clock p.m. Mountain Standard Time, but it's around 11 o'clock in the morning there in Manila in the Philippines. And I guess the good folks of Manila is having problems getting water distributed to them. So Alex, I should say Major, I got Alex on my mind. Major is in a hotel room, reclining and having a good time and having some water to shower with. So you're back with us, Major? How's it going?
Sure, I'm mission accomplished. These people here at this, they're just awesome. I can't say enough about this hotel. They're just incredible people. They're just no problem. Late checkout. Everybody's happy. It's friendly, wonderful people.
Good.
So, we're all set. We have water.
Awesome.
Which is always good. Like I said, you don't realize how many times you go over and need a little bit of water every day. So we're learning.
Well, I like to go out and do dry camping once in a while, and just to get a handle on our get back to nature a little bit. So I have a motorhome, and sometimes I'll just turn the water faucets off and just go out and rough it, but have a nice place to sleep in a nice warm bed. That's important. It's all good things. So again, ladies and gentlemen, we broadcast through the Goldwater Network. I'm telling you, I'm getting more and more people in my network saying, you ever heard about this Goldwater? It's good stuff. These guys are putting out some good information. So kudos to you again, Major. And we were brought together by means of Alex, our good friend, who's no longer with us. I wanted to ask you, have you heard anything more on what's gone on there? I've tried to call the gal. I won't give her name on the broadcast. No response. No nothing. I just, it's like a black hole. What about you?
Yeah, it's one of those things where I'm just not ready to. I'm not even responding to emails that have him in the subject line right now. We'll see what happens. Maybe this week I'll start looking, but just not ready yet. Not ready to even go there.
I hear you.
But it's certainly going to be looked at.
Yeah, I just I gotta say that it's about every not once or twice, but dozens of times I find myself thinking about Alex, and we talked a lot whenever he had some issues or that he would call me up and bounce things off, and I miss that. I do, and I think it's just always a tragedy. He was such a still a young man with a lot to give. Just such a shame. And we've talked about that last week, and our producer Dominic has been out of the country, and he's back in the neighborhood up there. I don't know if he can find some answers out or not. I don't know. It's a reality that we all have to leave this plane of existence sometime or other. And so, we just, again, it's caused me to sit back and say, let's enjoy every minute of every day. So I got to tell you, I took years ago this personality profile when I worked for a company called Intermountain Financial Group. They had to have this intelligence quotient test and your personality profile. So how they can better manage it. You know what I'm talking about. Most big corporations have that now. But my immediate supervisor, his name was Hank. Hank calls me into his office and he says, here's your results. You're in the 98.9 percentile. I says, what does that mean? That means there's 1.1% of the population that's smarter than you are. I said, I'm sorry, is that a bad thing? He says, well, here's where most of our associates are ranking. They're in even as low as the 78th percentile. We will not hire anybody below 75 percentile. I said, does that mean I'm being primed for management? He did. He laughed. He says, "You're not taking my job, if that's what you're meaning." but I want to share this with you because it's, along with your personality profile, here is what makes you tick. And I think and my wife was actually with me, my wife Joan. And when he read off the personality profile, she said, "That's him. That's my husband." It basically said, because you're able to see the bigger picture and put the pieces together. I'm paraphrasing it, okay? That you can solve complex problems easier than most people can. The biggest challenge to this personality, with this intelligence quotient combination, is they tend to get extremely frustrated and angry when people they are associated with don't see what they see, because they expect everybody to be able to see, because to them it seems like so simple. And that's right. I say, okay, I read Henry's book, I see these things, and I go out and measure, and then oh my gosh, water is level. I mean, it's not a rocket scientist to come out and to take a picture of the horizon on whether it's a cruise ship or whatever, and the horizon you can measure from 18 floors above on the deck of a cruise ship, measure point A in the horizon to point B as far as you can see, and do the graphing measurement that it's a 90-mile span, right? And then go, as Henry points out in his book, there's a great website to calculate the 8 inches per mile curvature drop squared. It's pretty simple geometrical measurement of an arc curvature. And my friend Dave, who's maybe listening to the show tonight, he's a graphic artist. I said, "Dave, look at this. Here's a picture of this horizon that I took from a cruise ship that I was on, and I went back and pulled this up. Here is the points from the horizon A to B, and here's the measurement. It's a 90-mile stretch. Here is, if the Earth was curved, given the ocean, here is the arc of the curve you should see." Oh my goodness, it's amazing. Over a 90-mile stretch, we're talking about 3,000 feet of arc drop, divided from the apex in the center to the both points of the horizon. You obviously don't see that. End of story, case closed. I shared this with Alex. Alex did his little giggle. "That's good, True. That's a good one. I'm going to have to bring that up in the moderation." I says, "Yeah. I mean, I want my friend Dave to do a graphic illustration of the picture through. You can manipulate it through CGI. Here's what you see from the cruise ship. Here's what you should see if the Earth is what NASA and government says it is an oblate spheroid. You don't see this. If you say you see this, you're the one that's crazy." And yes, I get angry when people don't see what is so flippin' obvious, because I see it. And you know what? I got to say, Major, without Alex, I probably wouldn't have seen it. I wouldn't have. If he hadn't cared enough to send me that book without his return address, because I don't know why he should have put his return. I would have given him respect of, "Wow, Alex, this is cool." But he didn't even put anything. I didn't know where it came from. I thought it was from Henry himself. Wow. One step at a time. You're right.
Yeah.
One thing I'm telling you, I see it, and I get frustrated when people can't see it, or worse, refuse to see it. And then I get even angrier when I go to people that should believe the Bible, and they come and say, "Well, that's not what my Bible says." "Well, what does your Bible say?" "Oh, it's the NIV." And then I say, "What? Why did they change it? And who did this?" So I began to do my digging. And the New International Version, guess who owns that publishing? Guess who publishes that? Rupert Murdoch.
No, you got to be kidding. Really? Murdoch?
Yeah. Murdoch. Yeah. Rupert Murdoch owns the company Zondervan, which has all these publications, these Christian books. He owns it. Okay. He also owns the same company, Random House, that publishes Anton LaVey's Satanic Bible. In one of his websites, they actually have in the order form the Bible. In the Bible section, you can order the New International Version, and right next to it, you can click and order the Satanic Bible. I said, I was pointing this out to Henry. Henry says, yeah, I've been saying this. This is another one of his books he wrote about exposing the papal authority of Rome and their agenda to the Jesuitical order. There is philosophy professors like the people we're involved in. They do what's called Jesuitical arguments, which they'll never, they never come to a factual state. They always have hypotheticals out there and keep the spin cycle moving, right? It's by design. The Jesuits are skilled at this. It's called sleight of hand and not look at what's happening here. When they're punching you in the gut, they're making you're focusing your attention someplace else. Do you know that Rupert Murdoch was actually knighted by the Pope under the order of St. Gregory? He was given a papal knighthood. Rupert Murdoch. I submit it was because,
Are we going to have to wait for some white ashes when the control of this media?
I got to tell you, it makes all the sense in the world. And I wrote a paper back in 2013 on my findings on the King James Bible itself. Because you see, coming out of Mormonism, one of the things that the Mormons program you to believe is that the Bible is just really put together by some evil and conspiring men, Roman Catholics primarily, that have left out a lot of the plain and precious gospel truths. This is what Mormonism instills in you, okay, that you cannot trust the Bible. Ergo, the Bible's untrustworthy. Thank goodness we have the Book of Mormon. Thank goodness we have a living prophet to teach us what God wants us to know. Because without that, we're hopeless. That's Mormonism in a nutshell, okay? And so when I exited Mormonism, I said, well, what's the truth about the Bible? And so thanks to a lot of listeners to the story behind the story in the Bible Belt in Kentucky, some really honest, good Christian teachers stepped in to help me understand it. The history of the King James translators. I wrote this paper. There was 42 men. Actually, there were 49 with the 7 that were leading. They had 7 committees, each of 7 men, that basically independently of each other went through all these manuscripts over the 7-year period of time from 1604 to 1611. And each one of these men were massively smart, intellectual men that many of them knew 14, 15 languages at the drop of the hat. One fellow, this Mr. Andrews, was said to be, he could be the chief interpreter at the Tower of Babel. He knew all these languages. Experts. And they were looking for God-breathed structure in the original text, which is basically Hebrew text of the Masoretic text and the Greek New Testament. See, Greek letters have a corresponding numeric value, and same with Paleo, and even modern Hebrew has a numeric value. You go back to the original Masoretic text, that's the copies of the original manuscripts. They were so accurate. You realize that in Josephus's writings, he talks about this.
It's just the hotel.
In that era, if a scribe found one of his transliterations of the text into another scroll, if there was one jot or tittle, one little exclamation point that was wrong, basically, that scribe was not only defrocked, but was brought before the tribunal if it was just even accidental, it was a death sentence. Okay, they stoned false teachers back then. They say false prophets, but in the Hebrew, the word prophet is a teacher that flows with living water, which is the scriptures. If you falsify that, you're a dead man. That's how accurate it needed to be. And that held sway for thousands of years until the advent of Jesus Christ. Then you have the same inspired prophets who brought the text together in Greek. It became what's known as a Textus Receptus. And you know what, Major? The work of a man named Ivan Panin blew me away. I got, and I do get today, what Ivan Panin is all about. See, Ivan Panin's story, he's a Bolshevik Jewish fellow who was Harvard trained and a super math intellect in the early 1900s. He was a genius level mathematician. He was of the Bolshevik nihilist persuasion, completely and totally atheist, projecting and promoting the humanist agenda. The story goes that because of his prowess in mathematics, he was commissioned by some esteemed rabbis in New York City to paid a sum of money to take the work of F.W. Grant. F.W. Grant published a seven-part series called the Numeric Bible, where he postulated that there was a numeric structural code throughout all the Old and New Testament texts. It had a lot of the theologians at that era, in the turn of the century, debating it. And so here's Panin coming on board as a mathematician to show the statistical odds of this being totally bogus, coincident, and basically de-escalate this debate and to prove F.W. Grant to be a fraud. That's the basic story of Ivan Panin, P-A-N-I-N is his last name. So Panin began to do his work, starting with the first part of the Psalms, which is the first thing that F.W. Grant looked at. But you know what? He went back to the Masoretic original text like Grant did, and Panin found that not only was the pattern of seven accurate, but that it was even deeper and more multi-layered than anything he'd ever imagined. In other words, the Pentateuch, the 5 books of Moses, all interlocked. The prophets from Isaiah on down to the lesser prophets, all of them interlocked, and they interlocked with the first 5 books of Moses. And to a point where here Ivan Panin, the master mathematician, statistician, said this is absolutely not accidental. This is absolutely divine. There's not anything I can explain it. There's no way that it's coincidence. Well, the rabbi said, well, okay, we can go with that. Thank you for that. Now go to the New Testament and prove that this is all a fraud and that Jesus Christ is not Messiah by the Greek. So he went in and looked at what's called the Textus Receptus, the original Greek text, and you know what he found out? Oh, it fits even more of a glove. It's like a minute grinding cogs of a wheel meshing with another set of cogs. It's statistically impossible that this is accidental. What the bottom line is, Ivan Panin came out of this whole discussion with a humbled, beautiful conversion to Jesus as Lord. He became an absolute, rabidly born-again Christian in much the same manner that Saul of Tarsus, the student of Gamaliel, the head Pharisee of all Pharisees, became converted to Christ on the road to Damascus. Much the same type of miraculous conversion, because numbers don't lie, okay? So Panin was immediately, they tried to discredit him in the media. The New York newspapers took out these ads about Panin being, paid off by the Christians to lie and this type of thing. So Panin fought fire with fire. He put a full page out of the New York Times, which I'll have copies of. He says, I challenge anybody. I have some sponsors, yes, Christian pastors, who raised back then $100,000, Major, 100 grand back. This is 1920s. Okay, huge amount of money for anybody to come forward with a mythical, it's any type of satire of only 160 words, where you have the English letters doing a pattern of 7. So the whole 160 word passage will have to have the same patterns that's found in the first chapter of Matthew, the first 14 verses of Matthew, 160 words, etc., and having it do exactly what Patton found out the Bible does with Greek into the Hebrew. And you can make it up. It could be totally fictional. But see, the genealogical history in Matthew chapter 1 is not mythical. It's factual. These people existed. They're documented. Josephus talks about them. Okay? Not one person could come up with it. You can't do it. It's impossible. Because statistically, this is what Patton shows. He says there is one Google times to the Google power. That's what, 28 zeros. To the statistical odds of it being accidental is 1 in the Googleplex times the Googleplex. It's impossible. I read and my brain could follow that. I'm sitting there crunching Patton's numbers in his books, and I just said, oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. This is what the scholars of King James in 1604 were all assembled for. They were looking for these patterns. I wondered, why is the Gospel of Philip not in the Bible? Why is the Gospel of the Nativity not in the Bible? What is all these apocryphal texts that are superly, man, they sound great. How about the Essene Gospel of Peace? How about the book of Enoch, the book of Jasher? Why aren't these books in the Bible? Well, you know why? They don't have this structure of 7s running through it. This is what the mathematicians under King James were doing. This is what they determined to be legitimate God-breathed text versus that which is not. It doesn't mean they're not historically valid. The Iliad and the Odyssey by Homer is a good piece of literature. There's works by Josephus that are very historically accurate, but they're not God-breathed. They don't have this pattern of numbers. So the King James translators made it a point to keep that structure intact. Okay, so people say today, well, it's a little bit hard to understand. Well, it's a poetic structure. If you don't understand it, chances are you got too much fluoride in your brain. Chances are you've been hoodwinked to believe that you're not smart enough to sit down and pray and find out about it and have the Holy Spirit teach you about it. Okay? So what's frustrating to me is here you have these agents of Rome. When the King James team was assembled in 1604, check it out. They came to Parliament to basically get the final instructions and funding to do the project when Guy Fawkes, a known Jesuit, and his team were they brought in these large amounts of gunpowder to blow up all of the house. Blow it up to pieces, and it just about did. And if that had happened, there would be no King James Bible today. There probably wouldn't be a Bible at all today. But there was divine intervention. The plot was snuffed out, and the school kids of the day cited a little poem. Says, "Remember, remember the 5th of November. Gunpowder treason and plot. There's no reason why this gunpowder treason should ever be forgot." And that, how many people know about the gunpowder plot? You have Anonymous with the little Guy Fawkes Max going around saying, well, I'm anonymous, this and that and that. But the whole reason is they wanted to blow up the Bible, folks. And so we see Rupert Murdoch getting knighted by the Pope for what? What did he do that's so great? I submit it's the New International Version, the papal messing of the Bible. They can't blow it up, so they're going to change it just enough and take away any biblical confidence in the biblical cosmology. Shazam. Your comments, Major. I think you used to be Roman Catholic, didn't you?
Yeah, I was baptized Roman Catholic. That was, certainly not. This is not a bad thing. I mean, I don't. We weren't overtly religious, throw it in people's face type of religious. There were some family members that said grace, and then later on, the option of being confirmed Catholic came to me, and I chose not to be confirmed. And then in college, and after doing some traveling and studying all the major world religions and doing a thesis on what really was like the common theme of the Ten Commandments, the good basis of through all industrialized religion, and distilling it down, really came to the terms that what upset me the most was the bastardization and the selling of religion. And I believe it's a sin to sell it. And so I tend not to preach it. I have my own belief. I believe that Jesus Christ is our God and Savior, and I'll leave it there. There's some other common things that I just think should be. I think it's just a religion of common sense, and then I also have a different take on how humans should be evolving in a certain way spiritually, because if you don't have to be at war with evolution. You can take a scientific approach and understand that the purpose of evolution is to survive, and if you need food, water, shelter, all of these things. I don't have water at the moment, but I'm still surviving. But the end goal would be to evolve into a true spirit. And so that would be to me, a common sense way of viewing that there is an evolutionary spirit that's occurring, and that if evolution exists, and I think we can see it around us, that there is a goal to it, which is a spirit, an eternal soul. And I think that the goal of humans right now should be, when it comes to religion, should be to understand that they already have a soul and that they're responsible for it. So that's where I chime in on that.
Yeah, I understand, and I look at, when you look at Darwin's work, and I've read that. I've gone through university training, and I've read Origins of the Species and all of these things about the finch's beak changing and yada yada. These are adaptations within the genus. Okay, you don't see a finch going across to be a bat. You don't see the genetic structure changing. There's adaptations on the genetic line that are modifications, like you said, just to survive. But that's not evolution. That's adaptation. I debated this, and I was in college. I said, to say that human Homo sapiens came from the great apes, then if it's the bottom line to me is simply, if it's evolution of the fittest, you either evolve or you die, then there's no reason why chimpanzees and gorillas and orangutans would still be here. They would have needed to pass away because of the evolution of the fittest is the basic premise of this. And then you go back again to what does Darwin need for the whole theory to take shape? He needs billions of years where you have the structure of ribonucleic acid forming the different adaptations from pond scum, et cetera, et cetera. And see, without the Copernicus model, okay, and without the Big Bang Jesuit model, there would be no fuel at all to evolution because there's not enough time involved to do it. See, and it goes back. This is what's funny to me too. It's almost hilarious. The Creationist Research Institute, CRI, they put out some great pieces. One good full-length movie is Genesis History. Very eye-opening, very thought-provoking. Because the movie starts out, I don't know if you've seen this or not, Major, but this fellow comes up and he's talking about the topography of a canyon that's carved out, the strata of the rocks that have been exposed by the erosion, all this. He's saying this, by all geological science, would say this is millions of years old. And then he has a picture. He's standing in the fallout creation of Mount St. Helens, and it's not anywhere near that. It's, 35 years old. So that's the first thing you say, wow, wait a minute, here's a picture of it, in the 1970s. Here's a picture of it today. See the topography? It happened with a massive upheaval. And he goes on to explore and show how the Grand Canyon is not a little water over a long, long period of time, millions and millions of years. No, he shows conclusive evidence that the Grand Canyon and other geological features in the Southwest are the results of massive amounts of water in a very short period of time, a la the great flood of Noah. And so, the Genesis account, when taken from a different worldview, makes total sense. Absolutely. And even going to the issue of carbon dating, all of these things. But see, science wants you to believe one way. They train you. You take grades on what to regurgitate, not how to think about it. Step outside the box. These same Creation Research Institute professors, I've touched base with them because I've donated quite a bit of money to them over the years. I love what they're doing in refuting this evolution and age of the earth nonsense. They make great sense with it. I said, well, use the same logic here about the biblical example of biblical cosmology. How can you say in your videos that the planet is spinning and rotating and going through space faster than a speeding bullet, when your Bible says in numerous places the earth is unmoving and stable and has never moved? Can you justify that? And you know what happens, Major? They send me back, you are crazy. We don't want to debate. And they won't even just talk. They won't even discuss it. Again, they attack you as this is absolute nuts. Well, how can you defend the Bible and Genesis in one place and ignore the whole creation and cosmology of Job, chapter 38, and other places? I don't get it.
Yeah, it's a knee-jerk thing. It's one of those deals where it's like, oh, we're not going to touch that. We're not going to go there. So, point is that people need to calm down about this whole categorization and sit back and discuss all the different topics one at a time, and everybody can come to their own conclusions. You'd be surprised at how, in certain areas where people didn't understand anything when it came to science, some of the weirdest conclusions, or maybe the overtly obvious or just absurdly obvious, were overlooked. And it took a bunch of people, without trying to brutalize each other, it takes a bunch of people together, and I'm not kumbayaing or anything. We're here to debate. But you have to have some civil debate across the board. You'd be surprised at what that can accomplish. But unfortunately, some of the things that you're discussing and some of your conclusions are foregone, and your science is foregone because it's already been thrown away because you're stamped as being in one, in one little category, and therefore everything that you believe or do is shot. I mean, take a look at what happened to the Goldwater, my lord. It's we got, we're flagged all over the place and banned, and I mean it's ridiculous. I mean, actually, it's to a new level right now. It's a joke. So to the point where, in fact, actually, we're working on something which is a very interesting experiment to promote the same articles that we've done before, but I mean, under a different name, okay, and see what the response is. Because all they're doing is tagging you, and you can promote the same article, and it could be from CNN, and everybody would love it. They would love it. I mean, we write a lot of stuff that we could submit through if it just didn't come from us. Wow. I mean, that's the whole thing. And so that's what we're talking about here is just getting branded automatically. So no matter,
that's the whole Rupert Murdoch effect. I mean, you when you have such a media giant that controls all these Fox News outlets and all that he does, even though he's caught red-handed in a bad scandal as far as what he's his eavesdropping and the problems he's faced, that it's just like it's a blip on little speed bump a little bit. So he's past it. He's bigger than power, more powerful than ever, and shaping what people think and how they think. See, that's the issues here. And my goodness, Rupert Murdoch is not a good person. I mean, as far as morality is concerned, you look at
I toss him right into you got watch Facebook this coming week. Oh wow, truth, there's some really, really tasty morsels coming out right now. Things are heating up. I don't have anything confirmed on it, so I'm not going to say anything, but the rats are leaving the ship, and the ship, I don't know if it's sinking because they got a lot of money, these guys. They've already purchased so much government. It's going to be hard, but watch what happens to Facebook in the next week or two. You're going to see some incredible. That's
what I've heard. Zuckerberg might be under indictment for some felonies. It's quite a.
Well, it's certainly the largest class action lawsuit in the history of the world. No question about that. And some of the smaller ones from Washington are getting pushed forward through some decent judges in decent courts that have decent sense. So there is some movement going on to some of this class action. And it's not just there, but you're going to have to, it's only a matter of time before these social justice warriors, that's how they're explaining this. That's how they're justifying it. It's because society has deemed it that your speech, you're not able to say that, and they just tag you as being hate speech. I can't remember the last time I said anything hateful to anyone. I mean, if I did, I was joking about it. I mean,
well, you joke a lot.
Well, it's the opposite of hate. It's humor. I mean, it's the purpose of humor. It's not hate. This is fracturing right now, and we live in fascinating times right now because you're going to witness this giant that is going to, was on the brink of controlling the world, and they're just not going to do it. They're not going to win. And a lot of people say, well, they've already won, and they're just going to have to concede and make people think that they lost, and they still do. But it's a never-ending battle, and I don't think you're going to have one coup. But this next couple of weeks is going to be the big determining factor as to how far people are willing to go to sell their souls to this company. And it's a conglomerate of companies, Facebook, Twitter, Google. China is, we talked about Dragonfly over there. Google said, oh, well, we stopped doing that. And then last week we find out, well, no, they didn't. They just renamed it. That's all they did.
Well, here's the bigger question. We did all this expose on this radio show years and years before I even knew you. Alex was saying that's radio gold, Dr. Oz, radio gold, because we were dissecting the NSA, and golly, we actually went in there. They were getting set to open it and have the data collection started going. This is the big data collection center here in Utah. And we had interviewed people that spoke out of turn. They didn't know they were speaking out of turn, talking about, how Facebook and all the social media platforms are intertwined with the data collection center. It's real time. So this Cray supercomputer, they say it was Cray, but we broke the story that it wasn't a Cray supercomputer at all. It was a quantum computer based on water structures. Quantum computing is scary as, talk about something that spooks me. Okay. Oh yeah. And so the magazine Wired had a whistleblower came up and showed the connection between the Canadian research into quantum computing being deeply involved in this. And this was all done without congressional oversight, and National Security Council didn't even know about it. Believe me, my story was picked up. I have a contact in Washington who called me. My wife witnessed the phone call, and this fellow said, Dr. Ott, we just didn't know. I says, how in the hell could you not know in your intelligence network? Well, compartmentalization primarily, he said. But we heard your radio show. We did some digging, and we found you're absolutely right. And heads are chopped off here. The CIA itself had knowledge of it, but looked the other way and didn't report it. We will not allow quantum computers to run this world. Now, this was how many years ago? 6 or 7 years ago. And I because I posed the question to him. I said, what happens if they do it again without your knowledge? He says, well, because these social platforms will be ousted if they do. Now, wait a minute. Could this be what's happening now? When I heard this, I'm saying, is this part of a plan design, or is it by accident? Because because this would be critical mass point right now at the NSA and the data collection center, because they're having profiles on every person on this plane. I don't say planet. It's a flat plane, and they're having dossiers on everybody, whether you're Chinese or whatever. That's the outreach and control that they're working at, whether it's Dragonfly or what have you. I had one fellow on the show says, with the logarithms that Zuckerberg has put in the NSA control, give me if you can post 35 times on Facebook, and we map through all the other communications of emails, electronic transmission, we'll actually be able to know what makes you tick better than your own mother knows you. That's invasion of total privacy. And they're doing it for one reason: for the supercomputer to put out a program of total mass control. Agenda 21, all ties into it. Are you aware of the Deagle.com report?
Yes, I heard of it going back. I wanted to just on what you're saying on a supercomputer level, as far as the quantum having that level of power is okay. We understand that works, and we understand governments are using it. We understand that Facebook is using it, and Google certainly is. There's no question about it. But not all is lost true, because you can use that same level of computing against them. And so there's only going to be a certain amount of time before we're able to build stuff. and
I mean, and then it's on. It's on.
Okay, that brings us to the next question. And oh my goodness, we're rapidly running out of time here. 5 more minutes or so. What is this QAnon? I mean, I have a pretty good idea, and I talked to Alex about this again, and Alex would just say, interesting. At first, Alex was saying, this is JFK Jr. I says, oh, no. Well, why do you say so? I got pretty good evidence this is JFK Jr. I says, well, Alex, you're getting fed this information. Here's my contacts in D.C. and what they're saying. Why is it that there's all these pending arrests going to happen? You know, that's why I asked Alex. I says, this huge huge sting is going to happen. All of these Gestapo, Nazi, covert rhinos are going to be locked away with Hillary Clinton, and all the white hats are going to rule. It's supposed to happen before the election. It's supposed to happen, but why is nobody holding this Q character? He's saying all this is going to happen, and everybody's saying, yay, finally, yay, the swamp is going to be drained, but nothing ever happens. Why isn't anybody holding him responsible for that? My question.
Well, I mean, it's a phenomenon, okay, and you're using the word him, and most people think that it's more than one person.
Yeah.
And so you know the history. I mean, Q started the first posts back in wow. The first confirmed posts of Qs that were coming out, the ones that we're concerned about are started in actually 2017, early 2017, February. And you had a Q moved over to 8chan. And so and of course, if you go to any Q board, actually, I mean, it's hard to explain. It's so hard to sift through what's right and wrong, but I can give you what I know to be true. And so we're sifting through all of it that we know to be, I mean, because it's on our network. So we know if it's an authentic post or not. We're the best people to know because we wrote the software. And we keep the anonymity. So we're starting there. And what you can see is, there's a lot of cryptic stuff in it, but there are some amazing things. Some really creepy, more than coincidental things that occurred with Q. And that's the reason that he hasn't been discounted, he being in probably the plural. So
now here's
it's really fun stuff, True, and I know we're gonna have a lot of fun with it, and it's gonna be a huge series that we're just starting. We're releasing a series through books.audio, so we're gonna be doing audiobooks on it, but the audiobooks will contain Q files, all of the original Q files, and then a lot of other things. So we're releasing all of this at once, and I don't think that it's going to be done. And you'll see the original Q probably respond to this, and certainly I don't think that the Q that can be authenticated is going to be upset at all with this.
Okay, let me just ask this question. Why Q? Why not S? Why not B?
Q is a level of security clearance with the Department of Energy, and it is one of the highest levels of security clearances that you can get is a Q clearance. That's a stable clearance. Otherwise, you can get security clearance higher than the president in certain situations because you've got a situational clearance. So that's situational clearance is the highest you can get, but Q level clearance is through the Department of Energy, which is one of the highest that you can possibly get. And if you have Q clearance, you have authority for pretty much if you're thinking about the Department of Energy, in the worst crisis of all, the information that those people need access to and what they're in control of, it covers every single agency. So they're able to get access to most FBI, most CIA, I mean, a lot of CIA stuff. So Q level clearance is nothing, and that's why it's Q.
Let me throw something else out to you here. Talking to somebody I can't give, he says, no, I can't give his information, but he knows a lot about Q. Let me throw this out to you. In the halls of the NSA and the spooks of the CIA, there is, and again, this goes into quantum computing even, okay? The logarithms tied into the number 17 are key here. There's a lot of spiritual connections as well to the number 17. I'll just leave it for you folks. Just Google up spiritual meanings, symbolism of the number 17. Well, what is Q? It's the number 17 in the alphabet. All right. Let me just give you in numerology of codes, number 17 is a lot of meaning. Okay, it's responsible for, and I get this, the insights, responsibility, self-discipline, strength, compassion, spiritual consciousness, and wisdom, but more and above everything else, quote, a desire for peace and love for all of humanity. It's a very, numbers are the matrix, okay? The number 17 is opposed to the number 8, which is the 8-pointed star of Venus, which goes back into the real esoteric meaning of the Illuminati, okay? All over Mormon Temple Square and the Vatican, you see this 8-pointed star of the Chaldeans. The Chaldeans is the mystical divination number, okay? It's the number 8 is the star tarot of immortality. Well, 17, 1 plus 7, is the plane going away from that in numerology. It's an amazing insight that Q could, like you said, could well be a group of individuals that have united in this manner to fight against the number 8. This is like you said, this has been some creepy things going on here, especially when you look at the logarithmal structures of not only the quantum computer but the Cray computer. And 17 being one of the prime numbers and how it ties in to be able to access this realm of hidden knowledge, this esoteric knowledge. What do you make about that? Is it shooting darts or shooting blades?
At this point, I can say that the existence of Q is more than a coincidence. It's certain. I can tell you that for a fact. It's not somebody. It didn't start with somebody taking shots in the dark, because there is a way. Have you seen magicians? Magicians can sit down and they'll say, you're thinking of this number, or a letter, and there are people who can throw in suggestions or analyze situations and say, well, between this date and this date, and they're running probabilities. They're running probabilities because you get into tricky situations when you're predicting things, because Q is somebody who is telling you what's going to happen and has the authority, has some form of knowledge of it. And so that's legitimate. And me, I mean, I'm a big statistics guy, and I'm big into numbers. So statistically, the fact that Q is able to exist, isn't legit, and that these are all shots in the dark is just crazy because of how much is out there. And the volume is consistent way beyond accurate or very close to accurate than not. So now getting into the purpose and the reasoning behind it and the motivation, we don't know. We don't know. He appears to be supporting the President of the United States, however you want to look at that. But that's what we do. I mean, that's what we know. So, but stay tuned. Stay tuned. Next week, we're going to be running through. It's going to be good fun. I'll make sure and email you a bunch of stuff on this. And I'd love to have you on our show. And maybe we can find some time to do that and talk to a couple of Q people.
Well, yeah, I didn't know you had a show. I thought, well, see, I'm learning.
It looks like
We're out of time, ladies and gentlemen. That's the end of the show. We'll see you next week. Thank you, Major. God bless you. Be safe. I hope you get your water turned on soon. Take care now.
Godspeed, you.
Four. Put.
Oh, perfect timing. That's your fun.